In this module, we shall discuss about the financial crisis. A financial market is a marketplace that deals with the trade of assets. Its role is to channelize funds to those who have productive investment opportunities and maintain price transparency along with basic regulations of trading. Wrong allocations of funds can lead to an economic downturn and hence a financial crisis. A financial crisis is basically a situation wherein there is fall in the value of the financial institutions. They hit developed and developing countries as well as small and large ones. Reinhardt and Rogoff rightly said, financial crises are an equal opportunity menace. Financial crises have been costly to the economies like USA, Japan and the Nordic countries, but in the recent economic scenario, they seem to affect the developing countries with an even larger degree. The reason for a financial crisis may vary from economy to economy, but all financial crisis leads to the fall in the net worth of the financial system and hence to the decline of economic activity. They evolve over time and spread across borders. Crises are at a certain level extreme manifestations of the interactions between the financial sector and the real economy. After studying this module, you shall be able to know about the anatomy of financial crisis, know about the symptoms of financial crisis, know about the consequences of financial crisis, discuss the policy solutions, study the US financial crisis of 2008, evaluate the effects of financial reforms. Let us first discuss the anatomy of financial crisis. There is nothing more dangerous than incomplete knowledge. Lack of information, also known as asymmetric information, can hinder the efficiency of the financial institutions in an adverse manner. The smooth working of the financial market is impeded when one party in a financial contract has less knowledge than the other party, which leads to the inaccuracy in making decisions. For example, a borrower has more knowledge about the risk involved in the financial contract than the lender. Asymmetric information further leads to two basic types of problems in the financial system. First, adverse selection. Adverse selection is an asymmetric information problem that occurs before the transaction occurs when potential bad credit risk are the ones who most actively seek out a loan. Thus, the parties who are the most likely to produce an undesirable adverse outcome are most likely to be selected. Second, moral hazard. A moral hazard is a situation where a party will take risk because the cost that could incur will not be felt by the party taking the risk. Moral hazard occurs after the transaction occurs because the lender is subjected to the hazard that the borrower has incentives to engage in activities that are undesirable from the lender's point of view. Moral hazard occurs because the borrower has incentives to invest in projects with high risk in which the borrower does well if the project succeeds, but the lender bears most of the loss if the project fails. So even though there are good credit risk in the marketplace, lenders may decide to not make a loan just because adverse selections and moral hazard make it less likely that a borrower will pay back the loan. A financial crisis occurs when asymmetric information prevents the efficient allocation of funds between the lenders and borrowers. There can be multiple causes, be it macroeconomic imbalances, internal or external shocks, bank runs, spillovers among financial markets, mismanagement of financial liberalization, innovation, asset price booms and bursts, or a general increase in uncertainty caused by failures of financial institutions acts as a spark in the financial markets. Financial liberalization, elimination of restrictions on financial markets, promotes financial development in the long run, but in the short run can lead to a credit boom, that is, it can encourage financial institutions to go on a lending spree which might lead to overly risky lending even in the presence of government lenders. Government safety nets weaken market discipline and hence banks will be willing to take on greater risk. Eventually, value of loans began to fall, leading to fall in the net worth of the value of the financial institutions. This all leads to deleveraging, and the lenders, seeing the risk, starts pulling out their funds of the institutes. Lesser funds imply lesser loans, and hence a lending boom turns into lending crash. Scarcity of loans leads to fall in the spending of borrowers, leading to decline in aggregate demand, and hence the economic activity contracts. Similarly, value of assets such as equity shares plays vital role in determining the economic worth of a country. Let's say there is an increase in the price of assets well above their fundamental economic values due to credit booms or low interest rate. This increase leads to the formation of asset price bubble. When the bubble bursts, prices tend to realign with the fundamental values. Stock prices fall, net worth of the companies along with the value of collateral they pledge declines. This further leads to tightening of lending policies, which in turn leads to the devaluation of financial institution assets, which causes them to deleverage, steepening the decline in aggregate demand and economic activity. These factors, along with lack of fair assessments of loans from the rating agencies, decline in real estate, foreign influence and gear usually manifested by bank run, are responsible for the initiation of a financial crisis. Moving on to the symptoms of financial crisis. Whenever there is a fall in the equity share, employment, output and a rise in the government debt, one must understand that a crisis is on its way. Financial crisis and banking crisis, even though seem same, have a difference. Banking crisis solely deals with the events in financial market and precedes a financial crisis. Usually the reasons for a banking crisis constituents of bank runs or large-scale assistance of a major institutions. Deteriorating balance sheets and tougher business conditions lead some financial institutions into insolvency. There is an inflow of money supply due to the bursting of financial bubble. Kaminsky and Reinhardt said that crisis occurs because a country finances its fiscal deficit by printing money to the extent that the excessive credit growth leads to the eventual collapse of the fixed exchange rate regime. These symptoms, along with severe decline in trade and stocks, usually mark the beginning of a financial crisis. Let us now discuss the policy solutions. In order to manage the financial stability, monetary policy and macroprudential regulation can be utilized, but it was argued that using monetary policy can be dangerous. An increase in the interest rate will eventually lead to unemployment and might even result in deflation. But macroprudential regulation is a less controversial option. A regular check on the financial regulation can prevent credit boom and hence any asset price bubbles. Implementing policies at the initial stages or reassuring that the credit standards are sufficiently high can help improve the performance of both financial system and the economy. Next, moving on to the case study, US financial crisis 2007-2009. Following the dot-com bubble, US economy was already slumping into a recession, and it was then that the terrorist attack of 9/11 happened, which stroked the ultimate symbol of global economy, the Twin Towers of World Trade Center. In the spring of 2001, Federal Reserve started lowering interest rates from 6.5% to 1% till 2003 to keep employment down and to save companies on a brink. Citizens were asked to shop more. Politicians encouraged home ownership by creating subsidies and legislations that pushed lenders to lend. The low interest rate led to the increase in the investment in the household sector and hence to the creation of the housing bubble. Now, bigger home equity loans, also known as NNA or no income, no asset loans. Government further introduced two home mortgage financing companies, Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, to encourage minority markets. These companies donated more than $200 million to the politicians, and hence they played the role of both a GSE and then a ESG afterwards. Lenders were carefree about their money. This, in a way, created a situation of moral hazard for the borrowers. Banks started selling the mortgages further to others, Germany, China, and Norway, in the form of securities, and everybody was willing to buy them because the rating agencies gave them high and wrong rates, that is AAA, as they were being paid by the sellers themselves for doing the same. But in 2006, this spell was broken as the interest rate realigned themselves to their normal value. People could no longer take new loans to pay off old loans. The mortgage securities became increasingly worthless and people with low income could not afford to live. Rating agencies removed the ratings and investors stopped lending money. The financial crisis in US economy starting with an economic crisis. To save the economy after the 9/11 and dot-com bubble collapse, government tried to save the economy by inflating another bubble, which on busting led to the real estate credit crisis. But then, in order to get out of the financial crisis, a new rather big bubble was inflated, the global bubble. This was the bailout bubble. Seeing the economy falling due to recession and no sales or exports in the economy, they decided to stimulate packages. Money was fueled in the economy to keep it working. It was not only United States but China, Australia, United Kingdom and many more economies. By September 2008, US economy collapsed. Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac were taken over by the government. September 15, 2008, the Lehman Brothers collapsed, resulting in near breakdown of the world's financial system. If not financed by the government with $85 billion, AIG, world's biggest insurer, would have collapsed, which would have added to the global financial crisis, and it could have affected millions of lives. On October 13, Congress agrees for the biggest financial bailout, that was $700 billion. But it was a waste of money as the objective for the bailout was not specified, which led to uneven distribution of money in the economy. By November 30, there was a job holocaust in the economy, and by December 16, interest was practically reduced to 0% by the Fed to restore investors' confidence. The same mistake was repeated again, but this time US economy was not alone. This was a step taken at global level, and it was a suicidal step. By the end of the year, all major economies were in recession. Unemployment rate was around 7.2% in December, and US lost almost 2 million jobs in the last 4 months. Economic output fell by 0.5%. Alan Greenspan, former chairperson of the Fed, described the 2007-2009 financial crisis as once in a century credit tsunami. Brian T. Moynihan, CEO and President, Bank of America, said, "Over the course of this crisis, we as an industry caused a lot of damage. Never has it been clearer how mistakes made by financial companies can affect Main Street, and we need to learn the lessons of the past few years. One must notice that it was the lenient behavior of the government that indirectly led to the whole chaos. Had it been the government was a little more careful with the policies and bailout, the recession could have been avoided." Let us now discuss the effects of financial reforms on the economy. As discussed earlier, the working of the financial market can have adverse effects on the economy as whole. Sometimes might lead to a depression. So basically, any changes in the financial system will bring about prominent changes in every sector of the economy. Taking into consideration a few financial reforms, we will discuss their effect on the financial markets and hence the system. First, liberalization. Financial liberalization can be referred to as deregulation of control and command system of government and the creation of a platform wherein the market forces provides the price mechanism for the financial institutions. In other words, it is the removal of barriers imposed by government. According to the financial liberalization theory, Shaw and McKinnon, financial liberalization increases savings, which leads to increased investment and hence economic growth. It provides foreign investors incentive to drive up local equity prices permanently, hence reducing the cost of capital. If not liberalization, The monetary policy introduced in a financial repressed economy would have led to imposing high reserve requirements or compulsory holding of bonds, which would have lowered interest rate, discouraging savings and hence crippling down the investment. It has been claimed that it generates tremendous booms and bursts in the short run, and hence the macroeconomic effects of the same remain controversial. But anyhow, it has become an important element in the economic policies of all the developing and developed economy lately. Second, privatization. As the name suggests, privatization is the method of reallocating functions of public assets to the private sector. It is the selling of state-owned assets to the private sector. The main benefit of privatization is the improved efficiency. Private companies have profit incentive to cut cost, be more efficient, and take into consideration the long run effects. The pressure imposed by the shareholders and increased competitiveness in the market can be the greatest spur to improvements in efficiency. But then the creation of private owned assets by the government itself can lead to creation of a natural monopoly, which might lead to exploitation of consumers due to high prices charged by them. This type of ownership ignores public interest, as their primary objective is profit maximization. So privatization, with its pros and cons, is also a major financial reform that changes the face of the economy. Private companies not only easily raise investment in the financial markets, but also due to higher interest rates charged from them, serve as a useful constraint to promote efficient investments. Third, globalization. Globalization refers to the integration of the world economies via ideas, views, products, and other aspects of culture. It creates a platform for financial markets to trade at international level. Globalization of financial market gives financial institutions more opportunities to extend their area of trade and offer diverse services to the consumers. It gives access to capital flows, technology, human capital, cheaper imports, and larger markets of exports around the world in the form of FDI. It is even observed that globalization sometimes leads to income inequalities, global instability due to interdependence. Kofi Annan, it has been said that arguing against the globalization is like arguing against the laws of gravity. That is, globalization might lead to few bumps in the short run, but protection can make bad situation, and hence globalization is inevitable in the long run. The introduction of liberalization, privatization, and globalization led to a complete makeover of many developed and developing countries like USA and India. Taking into consideration the case of the USA, one would notice that the impact of the economic crisis of the Great Depression in the 1930s and the recent Great Recession of 2008 were very different, as Great Recession was a global crisis. It affected not only USA but also created a spillover effect in other economies due to financial reforms that were introduced in the economic policy of almost every developing and developed countries interconnected the financial markets. So, not only USA but Mexico, Venezuela, Iceland, Ireland, Spain, United Kingdom, Italy, Egypt, etc. were the victims of the crisis. Now we shall discuss the concept of capital mobility and financial integration. Capital mobility is the easy and seamless movement of capital from one country to another. The financial reforms encourage capital mobility, but many did oppose free mobility of private capital, as it was observed to be behind the cessation of crisis during the 1990s. It can affect economic performance in the following ways. A. Via foreign savings. Countries with more open capital account will be able to easily finance its capital account deficit and hence increase volume of foreign savings that, if not accompanied by decline in domestic savings, would increase aggregate savings and hence higher investment followed by economic growth. B. Via efficiency and productive growth. Elimination of capital controls tend to result in high return in investment and higher productive growth. So the ones with capital mobility will be better than the ones with capital controls. C. It may even inflict cost in countries with increased capital mobility, which would limit the benefit to the developing countries, making them more vulnerable to the volatility of global financial markets. Financial integration, as the name suggests, is the process which interlinks different financial markets irrespective of the political or economic boundaries. These integrated economies have synchronized GDP fluctuations and even consumption patterns. It leads to better capital flow and governance, high investment and also sharing of risk. But a high degree of financial integration can also lead to economic instability and will lead to inequality as capital scarce countries can be exploited by the capital rich ones. Let us summarize what we have learned in this module. There is no particular reason for a financial crisis to occur. Its effects depend on the economic and political condition of the country. The fiscal and monetary policies that include taxation and introduction of financial reforms decide the consequences of a financial crisis. There still remains a sense of ambiguity and no one has properly been able to understand the working of financial institutions, which can be supported by the statement by Paul Samuelson. What we know about the financial crisis is that we don't know very much.